rabbinic history in of itself. It's going to be an extra long session over here today. Today we are concentrating on the country Bulgaria over here, so very, very important. We're going to see the fabric of the rabbinic history, what actually went on all these years, a lot of rich heritage and culture. So stay tuned, and I hope this will be as informative as possible. We know that the history of the Bulgarian Jewish community actually goes back 2,000 years almost, and they've had a continuous presence in historical Bulgarian land since the 2nd century Common Era, and have played an important part in the history of Bulgaria. Now, I think currently in Israel there's 75,000 Bulgarian Jews. I think in 2021, as of then, 1,153 people in Bulgaria would be halakhically Jewish, if I'm not mistaken. That we have to double check in of itself. Now, the Jewish community, the Jews, are believed to have settled in the region after the Roman conquest in the year 46 Common Era. So we're going back many years ago, nearly 2,000 years ago. It's interesting, the ruins of the sumptuous 2nd century synagogues have been unearthed in Philippolis, I believe, this modern Plovdiv there, in Nicopolis, also Nikopol, also Opia, Oeskus, Gigen, Pleven province, and Stobel. Obviously now that's part of North Macedonia. The earliest written artifact attesting to the presence of Jewish community in the Roman province of Moesia Inferior is a late 2nd century Latin inscription found at Opia Rieskis, which actually bears a menorah on it and mentions the Archi synagogues also. The famous man Josephus testifies to the presence of Jewish population in the city. Now, I think there was a decree of a Roman emperor. This was his name was Theodosius, I think from 379, regarding the persecution of Jews and destruction of synagogues in Illyria and Thrace, as a proof of, let's just say, early Jewish settlement in Bulgaria over here. And let's skip a few hundred years over here. I think there was establishment of the first Bulgarian Empire and its recognition in the year 681. A number of Jews suffering from persecution in the Byzantine Empire might have settled in Bulgaria. At its maximum, let's say in the 9th century, Bulgaria included 9th century sites associated with Jewish people such as Vojvodina, Krisana, and Mihai Vitizu, and Cluj also respectively. And I think Jews settled in Nikopol come with the year 967, so then there was a presence since then. Some arrived from the Republic of Ragusa and Italy. I think there was very merchants, let's just say, from the lands were allowed to trade in the Second Bulgarian Empire by Ivan Azan II. And later, I think the Tsar, even Alexander, married a Jewish woman, Sarah, who was also renamed, I think later on, Theodora. Unfortunately, she converted to Christianity and had considerable influence in the court. She influenced her spouse, I think, to create the Tsardom of Vidlan for her son Ivan Shishman, if I'm not mistaken, who was also Jewish according to Jewish law. Obviously, we take Jewish law from the side of the mother. Despite her Jewish past, she was fiercely pro-church, unfortunately, which in those times was accompanied with anti-Semitism. Now, I think, for example, in 1352, the Church Council ordered the expulsion of Jews from Bulgaria. Obviously, there was anti-Semitism all throughout, and physical attacks on Jewish people followed. In one case, sadly, 3 Jewish people had been sentenced to death and was killed by a mob, despite the sentences having been repealed by the Tsar at that point in time. Now, the medieval Jewish population of Bulgaria was, let's say, Romanized in of itself until the 14th and 15th centuries, when Ashkenazim from Hungary and other parts of Europe began to arrive. Now, friends, anyone joining in, we are exploring the history of the Bulgarian Jewish community, so please subscribe to our channel and welcome all the fantastic people out there. By the completion of the Ottoman conquest of the Bulgarian Empire, come 1396, and there were sizable Jewish communities in Vidin, Nikopol, Silstara, Pleven, Sofia, in Yambol, Plovdiv, and in Stara Zagora also, respectively, at that point in time. And I think it was in come the year 1470, Ashkenazim banished from Bavaria. They arrived, and contemporary travellers remarked that Yiddish could often be heard in Sofia, which is very interesting. There was even an Ashkenazic prayer book that was printed in Saloniki by the Rabbi of Sofia in the middle of the 16th century. Now, beginning in 1494, Sephardic exiles from Spain migrated to Bulgaria, and via Salonika at that point in time, Macedonia, Italy, Ragusa and Bosnia, they settled in pre-existing Jewish population centers, which were also, I think, major trade centers of Ottoman-ruled Bulgaria. At this point, I think Sofia, in of itself, was host to three separate Jewish communities. There's the Romanites, the Sephardim and Ashkenazim. This would continue until 1640. I think there was a single rabbi was appointed for all three groups at that stage of time, respectively. Unfortunately, in the 17th century, the ideas of the Shabtai Tzvi, the heretic, the false messiah, became popular in Bulgaria at that point in time. And supporters of this movement, including Nathan of Gaza and Samuel Primo at that stage in time, they were active in Sofia. And I think Jewish people would settle in various parts of the country, including a new trade center such as in Pazarditsk, respectively, and were able to expand economic activities due to privileges they were given and due to the banishment of the Ragusan merchants who, let's say, had taken part in the Chibrotsky uprising. I think that was in the year 1688. So that's a whole topic onto itself, the whole topic of the Shabtai Tzvi. Now, I think a modern nation-state of Bulgaria was formed under the terms of Treaty of Berlin, which ended the Russo-Turkish War of 1877 to 1878. Under the terms of that treaty, Bulgarian Jews of the new country were granted equal rights. Come what 1909, the massive and grand new Sofia Synagogue was consecrated in the presence of Tsar Ferdinand I of Bulgaria, as well as ministers and other important guests, an important event of the Bulgarian Jewry, without doubt. Jews were drafted into the Bulgarian army and fought in the Serbo-Bulgarian War in 1885, the Balkan Wars 1912 to 1913, First World War. 211 soldiers of the Bulgarian army were recorded as having died during the First World War, and the Treaty of Neuilly after World War I emphasized Jews' equality with other Bulgarian citizens. In the 1920s, 1930s, there was fascist and anti-Semitic organizations like Rodna, Zashtita, and Ratnik were established, and it grew in influence at that point in time. So we can see that. Now, I think in the years preceding the Second World War, the population growth of the Jewish community was behind other ethnic groups. In 1920, there was 16,000 Jews among the Bulgarians. By 1934, the Jewish community had grown as much as nearly 50,000, a staggering, I think, 48,565, with more than half living in Sofia at that point in time. That only amounted to 0.8% of the general population. Now, Ladino was the dominant language in most communities, but the young often preferred to speak Bulgarian, and the Zionistic movement at that point in time was completely dominant over the local population ever since Hovevei Tzion had come about at that point in time. That's very, very important, let's just say, to say. Anyone that's welcome to our channel, anyone joining at the moment, please subscribe to the channel and welcome. We're exploring the history of the Bulgarian Jewish community. Now, we're going to speak a bit more about the Holocaust time period of Bulgaria. I just fast forward to 1943. Bulgarian military and police carried out deportation of all 11,343 Jews, I think, from the Bulgarian occupied territories of Macedonia, Thrace and Pirot. You can see the terrible anti-Semitism that actually took place there. Transported them by train through Bulgaria via transit camps established for the purpose there, and embarked them on boats bound for Vienna, unfortunately to Nazi Germany. I think 12 of them would survive. Also, in March 1943, Bulgarian military police, assisted by German soldiers, unfortunately, really sadly, you can cry when you read this, massacred deported Jews from Komotini and Kavala, who were on board passenger steamships of the Karageorge and sank in the vessel. And when the deportation, I think, moved from the occupied territories to the pre-1941 ones, news of the preparations for deportations incited protest among opposition politicians, members of the clergy and intellectuals in Bulgaria. I think, unfortunately, the Tsar Boris III was initially inclined to continue with the planned deportations. On March 9th, several members of the ruling party in the parliament, Pater Mikhailev, Dimitar Ekonomov, and the deputy speaker Dimitar Peshav and others forced the interior minister Gabrovsky to temporarily halt the deportation of the rest of Jews. I think on March 17th in 1943, Peshev sent a letter signed by 42 members of the parliament to the Prime Minister Bogdan Filov in which he wrote, "It is impossible for us to accept the plans have been made to deport these people, even though ill-minded rumors attribute the intention to the Bulgarian government." For his role in preparing the letter, Perhav was forced to resign. More protests actually took place, notably the Metropolitan Stefan I, which pressured the Tsar to suspend the deportations indefinitely in May 1943. Shortly afterwards, the Bulgarian government expelled 20,000 Jews from Sofia to the provinces. Special trains were arranged, and the Jews were assigned specific departures, separating family members. A maximum of 30 kilograms of property per person was allowed. The rest they were forced to leave behind or sell it at very low prices, and part of it was otherwise pilfered or stolen. Bulgarian officials and neighbors benefited from this process. You can see the horrifics of the anti-Semitism that actually took place. I've been speaking about this all over Europe, unfortunately. The Bulgarian government cited labor shortages as a reason for refusing to transfer Bulgarian Jews into German custody. The expelled men were conscripted as forced labor within Bulgaria. Some of the property was left behind and some was confiscated. Shortly after returning to Sofia from August 14th, meeting unfortunately with the terrible Hitler, Boris died of a heart failure. Dimitar Peshov, opposition politicians and the Bulgarian church, prominent writers, artists, lawyers and former diplomats have been variously credited with rescuing some Bulgarian Jews. I think come 1998, way later on, Bulgarian Jews in the United States and a private organization called the Jewish National Fund erected a monument in the Bulgarian forest in Israel honoring the Tsar Boris. However, in July 2003, a public committee headed by Chief Justice Moshe Bechkis decided to remove the memorial because the Tsar Boris had consented to the deportation of the Jews from occupied territories of Macedonia, Thrace and Pirates to the Germans. Now, we're going to speak more about the Second World War also at that point in time, but after the war, most of the Jewish population would leave for Israel, leaving only about 1,000 Jews in Bulgaria today at that point in time. Now, according to the Israeli government statistics, 43,961 people from Bulgaria emigrated to Israel between 1948 till 2006, making Bulgarian Jews the fourth largest group to come from European country after the Soviet Union, Romania and Poland. The various migrations outside of Bulgaria has produced descendants of Bulgarian Jews, mainly in Israel, but almost in the United States, America, Canada, Australia, Western European places, and Latin America, respectively. Now, representatives of the Bulgarian Jewish community did not attend an official ceremony in March 2023, celebrating the 80th anniversary of Tsar Boris III's decision to save the country's Jews from the Holocaust. I think Alexander Oskar was a president of the Shalom Bulgarian Jewish organization, citing Bulgaria being an ally of Nazi Germany and Bulgaria's felicitation of the murders of the Jews of adjacent regions it occupied during the World War II as among the reasons for not attending. So you can see the horrific anti-Semitism. So since 1880, there was a population of 18,519. 1905, it was growing in those years, 37,000 plus. 1920 would see 43,000 plus. Come what 1934, peak at 48,565. And come what I think it was it really after the independence of Medina Israel, it would dramatically decline. Come 1956, only 6,000 Bulgarians, and as of 2021, just over 1,000 Bulgarian Jews. Okay, let's speak about some of the interesting Bulgarian personalities and rabbis also now. Let's spend a decent amount of time because we're a rabbinic channel. Encyclopedia is exploring the history of rabbis from all these different countries, so it's always a pleasure. Anyone that's tuning in now, we're exploring the history of Bulgarian Jewish community. So welcome to our channel, and please subscribe also. We've got fantastic content here. The first person I'm going to speak about is someone named Israel Kalmi. Now, we've spoken about him, I believe, before. I think he was born in 1885 and he passed away in 1966 in Sofia. And he was an attorney, I think, and he was a member of the Jewish Consistory of Bulgaria. He took active roles, let's say, in the struggle for restoration of the rights of the Jews after the Second World War. So he's a key figure in Bulgarian Jewish history without that. He was actually born in Rus in Bulgaria, and he acquired his high school education at the Hristov Botov School, I believe it was, and that's in the city. of his birth, he went on through a scholarship from the Rothschild family to study law at the Faculty of Law in Berlin, in Germany. And I think between the World Wars, Mr. Kalmy worked as a commercial attorney. He was doing a lot of public activity. He was a member of the Jewish Court of Family Law and a member of the philanthropic association called the Malbish Arumim. I think in the mid-1930s, the Bulgarian government began to undertake activities, obviously to get closer to Germany, aim to regain parts of Bulgaria they lost to it following its defeat of the First World War. As part of its conciliatory measures towards Nazi Germany, legislation was passed on the 23rd of January 1941, I think at that stage in time. It was known as a law for the protection of the nation, and this legislation significantly restricted the rights of Jewish people. In 1943, as part of its anti-Jewish activity, the government moved to the deportation of Jews from the territories of Bulgaria to extermination camps in Poland. Now, I think it was February 1943, an agreement was signed between Bulgaria and Germany under which the Jews of Trachea and Macedonia, the liberated territories, would be deported to Poland. At the same time, the transfer of Jewish people to temporary camps began. And now Mr. Kalmy and others acted to reduce the number of Jews who were transferred to these camps. I think, as we said before, I think it was more would happen in 1943. We spoke about it before. On June the 20th of June 1944, Mr. Kalmy sent Bagrianov a well-structured reason letter. He was a person via the Red Cross, in which he noted a number of restrictions that should be revoked immediately and various requests: removal of the requirement to wear yellow badge, allowing freedom of movement, the right to visit Sofia in capital city, the reinstatement of the right to work, opening the Jewish schools, synagogues, rabbinical courts, the granting of allowances for food, clothing, government, support of public kitchens, liberation from the work camps, cancellation of the curfew hours, cancellation of order forbidding Jews to enter shelters, and the restoration of the right of residence anywhere. Following on, I think, from this letter, the two met 2 or 3 days later on the 20th of July 1944. At the meeting, Mr. Kalmy was asked to travel to various cities, I think in Bulgaria, where there were Jewish communities, and they would present the intention of Bagrianov to annul the law of the protection of the nation and comply with the demands to restore civil rights to Jewish people, as had been presented by Mr. Kalmy. The local Jewish communities in Plevin, Shumen, Razgrad, Luskovit, Provadia, Targovich organized public meetings where Mr. Kalmy would lecture. I think in Rus, the local committee did not approve a meeting with him, and on the ground that he had not filed a preliminary summary of the matters he was about to address. I think the 5th of September 1944, the law of protection of the nation was annulled. On 9th of September 1944, the Soviet army entered Sofia and pro-communist forces seized power. A government formed by the Fatherland Front, a resistance movement that fought against a pro-German government, set up people's tribunals. Now, Bagrianov was accused of crimes against the Bulgarian nation, was tried and executed. Now, Mr. Kalmy testified at the trial, interesting enough. So, he was a key figure in the history of Bulgarian Jewry at that point in time. Now, Mr. Kalmy was married to Laura, I think, from the Kennedy family. She was a granddaughter of the famous historian Solomon Abraham Rosanis. Now, he's a key figure, Solomon Abraham Rosanis. We actually recorded a video about him. He lived between 1862 to May 1938. He was a historian, he was an activist, he was a librarian of Sephardic Jewry, a researcher of history of the Jews in Ottoman Empire, a very key figure also at that point in time, and a key Bulgarian also, because he was also Bulgarian, Mr. Rosanis was. And I recommend everyone to watch that video we recorded about him. It's also interesting, Mr. Kalmy was also a cousin of the author Elias Canetti, also, I believe. Now, Mr. Kalmy and his wife, they had 2 children, a son called Moshe and a daughter Rachel, also Cordova. And I think in 2004, his daughter Rachel established in his father's memory 2 drinking fountains at the Histrobote Secondary School in Rus, the city of his birth. That's very, very interesting over here. And so let's speak about more great people, rabbis from great people from Bulgaria. I will try and cover everything in this video. That's where there were probably hundreds and hundreds of rabbis was throughout Jewish history in Bulgaria, and I think much can be said with regards to that over there. With regards to that, you can move the chair here if you want. Okay, there was a famous rabbi, Tobiah ben Eliezer. Now, who was he? He was a Talmudist and a poet of the 11th century. He was author of Lekach Tov, another key Bulgarian, let's just say. He was a midrashic commentator of the Torah and the 5 Megillot, respectively. Rabbi Tobiah ben Eliezer. I think Zunz inferred, Tobiah's reference, he was a great person in of itself. I think he was mentioned of the massacre in Mainz, I think something in 1096, and he was, if I'm not mistaken, he was a great person at that point in time. Tobiah, I think, was so this great Tobiah, Rabbi Tobiah ben Eliezer, was the author of the Lekach Tov book. Now, much can be said about him. I'm not too sure whether he was actually part of. I think he had connections with Eliezer ben Isaac HaGadol and Rabbi David Conforti, if I'm not mistaken. And it was a time period of Rashi, and Bulgaria at that point in time had a great Jewish community itself. He wrote a book called the Lekach Tov, in allusion to his name Tobiah, and it's cited by many early rabbis. I think come in the mid-16th century. It has been often referred to as a Pesikta Zutarta, in distinction to the Pesikta Rabbatai, and the second title was because the editors of the parts relating to the book of Vayikra, Bamidbar, and Devarim, I think in Venice in 1546 was printed, found no title of manuscript, but noted that every verse was headed as Pas Piskata, respectively, over there. So this was an important book at that point in time. Now, I think other books will be named Lekach Tov, which weren't associated to him, if I'm not mistaken, at a later point in time. Now, another famous rabbi that was very much connected to Bulgaria was a code of the Jewish law, Rabbi Yosef Karo. Now, that's a whole lecture onto itself. We recorded a video about him. Maybe we'll record another video at a later stage. He lived between 1488 and 1575. I think 13th of Nisan is his Hilula. He was author of the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law. He was a prominent Sephardic Jewish rabbi and the author of the Jewish Law, the Bet Yosef, also known as Shulchan Aruch, and is regarded as, let's say, one of the main halachic authorities of his time. He's also referred to as a Mechaber, also as Maran, respectively. And he also would spend time in Bulgaria also, so that's a class unto itself. Now, another key rabbi that was also Bulgarian was Rabbi Judah Leon ben Moses Mosconi. He lived between 1328 to 1377, so nearly about 50 years he lived. He was a famous Bulgarian Romaniot, Jewish scholar, and a Talmud, born in Ohrid. And I think many wars would agitate Bulgaria at that point in time in the 14th century. And Rav Moschino would leave his native country about 1360. He was well traveled in 3 continents. He was in Chios and in Cyprus and in Negropont. He became a pupil of Rabbi Shemaria ben Elijah al-Ikriti in Laodicea, and later he went to Egypt. I think he studied under Rabbi Obadiah Mitzri, if I'm not mistaken. He was also in Morocco. He was in Italy and France, and it was close to various scholars, including Rabbi Moses Narboni and Rabbi David Hongoron, if I'm not mistaken. He's also a court physician, I believe, of Peter, one of the Peters of Aragon, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Peter IV. And he was well versed in philosophical works, both in Hebrew and in Arabic. He was occupied himself particularly in Rabbi Ibn Ezra's famous commentary on the Torah. Most of the 30 super commentaries on Ibn Ezra, which Rabbi Mosconi examined during his wanderings, were, in his opinion, maybe not worth as much. But according to Rabbi Mosconi, Ibn Ezra wrote his commentary on the prophets and on Hagigrophia, before that on the Torah, which he wrote 11 years before his death. Very interesting enough. Now, another famous Bulgarian rabbi is a famous Peleoet, Rabbi Eliezer Papo. He lived between 1785 to 1828, and he was a rabbi of the community of Silistra in the Ottoman Empire, obviously modern Bulgaria. He obviously wrote the Peleoets, a great book of Musar, ethical literature work in of itself. And he was about 42, 43 years of age. I think there's different opinions when he passed away. He was also the author of other great works, the Elef Amagen, the Orot Elim, the Chesed Lalafim, the Yal Tzuk Chasadim, the Chodesh Aviv, and the Beit Tfilah also. And he was Rabbi of Silistra, respectively. He was actually born in Bosnia, in Sarajevo, I believe, which is part of the Ottoman Empire at that point in time. He actually moved to Bulgaria when he was 27 years of age. And this Torah colossal work of the Beit Tfilah was filled with many different prayers for specific situations, including one for welfare and the Jewish people. I think there was a Ladino edition was published in 1860s, and a Hebrew version, I believe, was printed in Jerusalem all the way back in 1968. His grave, I think, in present day is known as a famous pilgrimage site. Many people actually travel to Bulgaria from all over different places to actually visit there at a point in time. Now we're going to go back and speak about more rabbis in due course of Bulgaria. We've mentioned a few of the key earlier ones. Let's examine some of the synagogues there's been in Bulgaria, and we'll expound on a few of them. The Sofia synagogue, for example, obviously based in Sofia, was built in 1909. And there was a Plodiv synagogue, which was in 1887. The synagogue of Philippopolis was more of a 3rd, 4th century. We're going back quite a bit. The Bidin synagogue was in 1894. The Verna Sephardic synagogue in 1890, if I'm not mistaken. That was a, let's say, Moorish revival architectural style. The Varna Sephardic synagogue was in 1890. The Varna Ashkenazi synagogue was in 1910. The Burga synagogue in 1909, I think that was a Neo-Byzantine, Neoclassical synagogue. The Samarkand synagogue also, respectively, in 1860. The Pasar-Djvik synagogue in 1850. And then, so we're just exploring the synagogues over here. The Schumann synagogue was mid-19th century in the area of Schumann. The Dobrich synagogue in Dobrich in 1887, now the key one. The Gotz Delchev synagogue was early 20th century. The Silistra synagogue and the Yambold synagogue was in 1896. Now, friends, anyone tuning in at the moment, we're exploring the history of the Bulgarian Jewish community over here on the special edition. And please, everyone, if you're new to the channel, subscribe now to the channel. I'm going to take a very short break, just a 1-minute break, and we're going to continue, and we're going to speak about the Sofia synagogue. Okay, so watch your space. Going to come back in 1 minute, just a short break, and please join the channel and subscribe now in the meantime. Okay, thanks everyone for waiting and tuning in. We're going to continue this class over here. Anyone joining in, we're exploring the history of the country Bulgaria, the Jewish community over there. We're exploring some of the synagogues now that there's been in Bulgaria. Now, the Sofia synagogue, that's the first one I'm going to speak about. It's obviously a Romanayot Orthodox Jewish synagogue, I think completed in the year 1909. The synagogue is the largest synagogue in southeastern Europe and the 3rd largest synagogue in Europe. I think it's one of the 2 active synagogues remaining in Bulgaria. Obviously, a Sephardi synagogue. I think currently, if I'm not mistaken, Rabbi Bechor Kachlon is actually heading it, or in recent times. Now, they're constructed for the needs of Sofia's mainly Sephardic community after a project by the Austrian architect Friedrich Gruanger. The synagogue building resembles, let's say, the old Moorish Leo Leopold Stadler Temple in Vienna, I think. The synagogue was officially opened on the 9th of September 1909 in the presence of King Ferdinand I of Bulgaria. The first preparations for the synagogue's construction, I think, dated from 1903, and construction actually started in 1905. Now, I think the construction of the brand new synagogue was part of the reorganization efforts of the Bulgarian Jewish community under the Lemberg-born chief rabbi, who we're going to speak about him, Rabbi Marcus Aaron Price, and local leaders Ezra Tadja and Avram David John Levy. Now, prior to construction of the new synagogue, the lot in Central Sofia had been occupied by an older synagogue. One of the architectural monuments of Sofia, let's say the synagogue located in the very city of the center, near the central market, let's say could accommodate as many as 1,300 mitpalim, people that pray there. The Sofia synagogue's main chandelier weighs as much as 1.7 tons and is the largest in the country, I believe. The synagogue's architecture, it's got the beauty of it, and the biggest chandelier in the Balkans is there, if I'm not mistaken. And the rumor was said that the gold was from ancient Palestine, from Eretz Israel. Now, since 8th of May 1992, the Sofia synagogue also houses a Jewish museum of history, which includes the Jewish communities in Bulgaria, the Holocaust and the rescue of the Jews in Bulgaria, expositions. I think there's also even a souvenir shop also over there. Let's speak a bit about that rabbi that was connected to the synagogue. I think Rabbi Mordechai Aaron Price, or Rabbi Marcus Aaron Price, I think he was lived between 1869 and he passed away on the 26th of February in 1951. So he was, I think he was working in Bulgaria as a head rabbi of that place, if I'm not mistaken. He was a Hebrew author, he was a publisher, and he was a Zionist activist also. And he was a chief rabbi of Stockholm in Sweden also, I think from 1914 all the way to 1951. So that was a staggering amount of time. So let's speak about him for a minute. He was actually born in Lviv. He actually came, his father was Jacob Meshulam Aaron Price, and he wrote in Yiddish, I think, in his young ages. He studied at German universities, and from 1884 he wrote for the Hebrew newspapers Hamagid and Hamelith. In 1896 he married someone of the name Rabbinit Esther Haskala, and from 1896 to 1900 he was a rabbi in Croatia. And even before, I think Herzl, Aaron Price, Nathan Birnbaum and others began to define the concept of, let's say, a new national Judaism. So I don't know if he was considered, let's just say, what kind of stream of Judaism he was. That I'm not so sure. I don't know enough information about it, so I don't want to state. I think from 1900 to 1914 he was in Sofia as a chief rabbi of Bulgaria. He was also a publisher of several Spaniolic magazines. After 1908 he would have huge interest in Zionism and Hebrew literature and decree, at that point in time. I think from 1914 he would then serve as chief rabbi in Stockholm. So he was a chief rabbi of Bulgaria for 14 years. He founded the Judisk Tichkrit, was engaged as a translator as well as scientific writer for different encyclopedias. He became a professor at Stockholm University. He published 20 books in Swedish, I believe, at that point in time. He emphasized the importance of seeking understanding of Jewish culture in the modern world and sought to create synthesis between general culture and inherited culture of the Jewish minority. And he was a chairman of other organizations, also which had helped sending aid in the form of food, medicine, clothes and money, primarily to Poland, but increasingly also to other parts of Nazi-occupied Europe. He was also chairman of the Swedish section of the World Jewish Congress from its institution in 1944, and succeeded by historian and pioneering scholar of anti-Semitism Hugo Valentine. He was also involved in planning the attempt of Roel Wallenberg to rescue Hungarian Jews, and he was one of the last people to see Wallenberg alive in Sweden. Very interesting enough. So we were just speaking about Rabbi Aaron Price, and now let's go back to the synagogues again. Also went on a bit of a tangent. Now, another synagogue that there was in Bulgaria, or the Plovdiv synagogue, I think it's a Romaniote Jewish congregation once again, located obviously in Plovdiv. It was built in 1892. It's one of the two active remaining synagogues in Bulgaria, and once again a Sephardi synagogue respectively. I think it's actually based in the Tsar Kaloyon Street, if I'm not mistaken. Now, a synagogue was constructed in ancient Philippopolis, dating from the reign of Emperor Alexander Severus in the first half of the 3rd century. It was followed by several renovations from the beginning of the 5th century, and in 1360, the city was conquered by the Turks. Certain Jewish people who emigrated from Aragon in 1492 settled in Philippopolis and built a synagogue called KK Aragon, which was standing in 1540. I don't think it's in existence any longer. In 1892, following the Bulgarian liberation from Ottoman domination, in 1878, one of the first synagogues to be erected was at Sion Synagogue in Plovdiv. It was built in the remnants of a small courtyard in what was once a large Jewish quarter called Orsa Metza during the Turkish rule. The location of the Sephardic synagogue is now called the Tsar Kailon Street. The synagogue is one of the best surviving examples of Ottoman-style Balkan synagogue, respectively. Now, there was an interior, the woman of the name Ruth E. Gruber, she would actually comment with regards to the interior of the synagogue, that the interior is a hidden treasure, a glorious, if run-down, burst of colour. An exquisite Venetian glass chandelier hangs from the centre of the ceiling, which has a richly painted dome. All surfaces are covered in elaborate Moorish-style geometric designs in a once bright greens and blues. The Torah scrolls are kept in the gilded Aron HaKodesh, respectively. And I think the synagogue is one of the best surviving examples of the Ottoman-style Balkan synagogue. I think come on in 1904 it was, the Jewish community possessed 3 other synagogues. One of them was called the Jeshurim, built in 1710 according to the inscription on a marble slab in the synagogue. The Habat Shalom, built in 1880, and the Shevet Achim, or Machitirim, which was founded in 1888 by immigrants from Karlovo, I believe, when the Jews fled during the Turco-Russian War, I think, which was in 1877-78. Before World War II, the Jewish quarter had a population of 7,000 people. Very, very interesting. Now, another synagogue we're going to speak about over here is the synagogue of Philippopolis over here. Obviously, it was built in the 3rd century, if I'm not mistaken. This synagogue was. Let's speak a bit about it. I think in the 3rd century it was synagogue, only ancient Jewish temple, let's say, found in Bulgaria. Once again, had a mosaic floor, which is well preserved in of itself, respectively. I think the ruins of the former synagogue was discovered in 1981 during an archaeological excavation of the adjacent site. But it was built at the start of the 3rd century AD during the reign of Severan dynasty, respectively, and faced south to Jerusalem. The place was itself. The synagogue was almost destroyed during the invasion of the Goths in 250 AD, but later was rebuilt in its original design, and the building was destroyed again in the beginning of the 5th century during the persecution of Jews in the Roman Empire. Then the building was restored and expanded. The second layer of floor mosaics, which excluded Jewish symbols, is evidence to that period. The synagogue was completely abandoned and destroyed in the end of the 6th century. Over there. Now, another synagogue we'll speak about is a Vidin synagogue. What's a Vidin synagogue? I think its ruins are located at Baba Vida Street in Vidin, in northwest Bulgaria. It was designed in, let's say, a Romanesque revival and a Rund Bogna styles. The former synagogue, I think, was completed in the year 1894. Once again, another Sephardi synagogue. I think now it's been a cultural center in the last 2 years, since 2023. In fact, the municipality of Vidin actually controls it, if I'm not mistaken. It's actually located on Baba Vida Street, if I'm not mistaken, in Vidin. I think a national monument of culture in Vidin. The former Sephardic synagogue is situated in the Kaleto neighborhood, next to the Baba Vida Castle and the banks of the Danube. It was the second largest synagogue in Bulgaria after Sofia Synagogue at its time. Unfortunately, the building was desecrated during the Second World War, was in ruins for approximately 40 years, and restored and was repurposed as the Jules Paskin Culture Center, named in honor of the painter Jules Paskin, that opened in September 2023. Now, I think let's explore a bit of history about it. Prior to construction of the current building, an old synagogue existed on the site, constructed with the support of Jacob Getegno. He was a noble, and the synagogue was destroyed in 1789, and it was rebuilt in 1839 with the support of Raphael Ashkenazi. And this building was again devastated by artillery fire during the Russo-Turkish War. The foundation of the new current synagogue were laid in 1890, and its construction was funded by merchants from the local Jewish community. The synagogue was consecrated on the 28th of September 1894 by the chief rabbi at the time, Dr. Moritz Grunwald, who hopefully we'll speak about in the coming minutes. The building was used as a house of tefillah prayer, accommodating up to 1,000 people. Until World War II, where it again was desecrated. After the Aliyah of the Vidin Jews in the 1950s, the former synagogue was left derelict and then was used for profane purposes. An earthquake in 1976 further damaged the building, and it lay in a ruinous state. The Bulgarian government initiated its reconstruction as a concert hall in 1983, and the project was abandoned with the fall of the communist regime in 1989, and the synagogue at that stage was without a roof. The former synagogue was added to the World Monuments Watch, I believe, at a later stage in time. And I think as of 4th of September 2023, the former synagogue reopened as a museum and multi-purpose culture center dedicated to Vidin-born Jewish painter Jules Paskin. And the opening ceremony was attended by Bulgarian President Rumen Radev, respectively. Let's now go back to rabbi territory over here, explore more within regards to the famous rabbis. And Rabbi associated synagogue we were just speaking about over here, Rabbi Moritz Grunwald. Who was he? He lived between 1853 to 1895. He was a chief rabbi of Bejulove Pisek and Mda Boleslav, and later served as chief rabbi for the Principality of Bulgaria. He was also a writer. He was an editor who wrote about the history of the Jews on linguistics of Jewish languages. So very interesting stuff. He was born in, of course, part of the Austrian Empire, now part of the Czech Republic. He attended University of Vienna and the Leipzig University. He would attain degrees, I think, in philosophy and theology. In 1881, he was ordained as rabbi by the Jewish Theological Seminary of Breslau and was appointed a chief rabbi in Bejulova in modern-day Croatia, I think between 1884 to 1893. He would serve as a chief rabbi of Pisek and Mlada, Borisov and Bohemia, also respectively. Come on, 1891, Dr. Sizemon Dankovic, who was a chief rabbi of Bulgaria, resigned after there was a dispute, I think, with the Minister of Foreign Affairs Relations, Dimitar Grekov, and 2 years later, Rabbi Grunwald was appointed to the position for a 3-year term, and during which the Jewish education revolution in Bulgaria began. Let's say in his position, he was involved in education. He wrote a guide for Jewish teachers. He instructed faculty in the schools and the community, while simultaneously conducting research on the history of Bulgarian Jewry at that point in time. He traveled the land, examining tombstones, archaeological sites, and during his tenure, let's just say, his position were amended, stating 3 qualifications, I think. A person who was a rabbi had to be 35 years of age, had to serve at least 5 years as a rabbi or teacher in the seminary, must be a graduate of a rabbinical seminary and hold a doctorate degree, and be elected by the Jewish consistory of Bulgaria. And they would have to have more than 75% vote. I think come June 1895, after his time period as chief rabbi in Bulgaria, he would leave for London, and after a job offer for the rabbinical position to replace Dr. Meir Lerner in the Federation of Synagogues. Soon after he would actually arrive there, sadly he fell ill and he passed away, and his sudden death was mourned with great, let's just say, amount of mourning in Bulgaria, and very, very popular over there, and was buried in the Jewish community in Edmonton in London, and left behind a huge bibliography, including books on the history of Bohemian Jews, and on rabbis such as Rabbi Shlomo Ephraim Lunchwitz, also respectively. Now, I believe some of his direct descendants immigrated to Ibiza in 1932, and later fought in the Spanish Civil War, reported over. So we just went on a tangent again. Let's speak about another synagogue, Pasadadvik Synagogue. Let's speak about that. Once again, another Orthodox synagogue. Served as synagogues from 1850 till the 1940s, and obviously it became a museum afterwards and used by the Jewish community. Once again, that was another Sephardi synagogue, respectively. Now, it's actually interesting. The earliest record of Judaism in Pasadadvik was in 1580, mentioned in an Ottoman register. In 1614, there were 7 households. That number grew to 10 between 1635 to 1641. And then I think In 1696, even more would be. Come what the year 1888, the Jews were 1,277, the highest number in the history of Jews in the city. In 1944, the Jews were up to 826. Their main occupations were trading and carpentry over there in of itself. There were many Zionistic political organizations established, especially in the autumn of 1944, such as Dr. Nachamzon and the Wizo. The biggest one was Nachamzon, which united other Zionistic organizations over there, which is very, very interesting. Anyone tuning in live, please subscribe to our channel. We're exploring the history of the Bulgarian Jewish community over here. Now, the Great Synagogue, let's speak about that. Sometimes called the Grand Synagogue or the Big Synagogue, was located on the Asen Zlatarov Street. The larger and older synagogue was built in the year 1850. It was actually designed by someone named Stavry Temelkov. It was associated with the Bratislavia Architectural School. And it was completed, I think, in the Bulgarian National Revival. It is believed that there were a previous synagogue in the same location, constructed, I think, in the 17th century. And it was burnt, I believe, in the first half of the 19th century. Obviously, there was huge immigration of the Jews in Bulgaria. The synagogue, I think, was left to be used for their intent, would actually move at a later stage in time, if I'm not mistaken. I think the synagogue was believed to be used up until the year 1940s. In 1972, the synagogue was formally closed, and it was used as a regional museum. Come on, 1979, it was completely renovated, declared a Bulgarian architectural monument of culture, and then given back to the Jewish community in Pazarchik, respectively. So, so that's very, very interesting. The Pazarchik synagogue we spoke, I believe, about also. And let's explore more of the rabbis. Now, let's speak about Daniel Sion. He was a rabbi, but unfortunately, a very sad story happened within regards to him, where he would later become part of Messianic Judaism. We have to stress, which obviously, but he went through the horrors of the Holocaust, so that has to be pointed out. But sadly, he didn't stay Orthodox at the end. He lived between 1883 till 1979. He was originally an Orthodox rabbi. He was also a Kabbalist and a political activist. He actually moved to Sofia, Bulgaria. He was actually a shochet. He was also shliach tzibur, cantor, and he was, I think at that point in time when he was in the Bulgarian Jewish community, was nearly completely assimilated at that point in time, and there was no really religious Orthodox Jewish communities in the country during the World War II. And in 1950, he would emigrate to Israel, and he was removed from his position on local rabbinical court because of his belief. He veered off in his belief of Orthodox Judaism, let's put it that way, and really went off totally how we would like, and it was pretty much excommunicated from the entire Orthodox rabbinate from that. He was actually 96 years of age when he passed away. He would actually pass away in Tel Aviv, in Jaffa, I believe, in November 1979. And that's something that we have to point out. Now, but unfortunately, that was a sad story what actually happened to him with his beliefs in Judaism. Okay, another chief rabbi of Bulgaria was a rabbi of the name Rabbi Asher Hananel. Let's speak about him for a couple of minutes. We actually spoke about him in a previous video before. I think he lived between 1895 to 1964, very much in Sofia. He was a historian. He was a chief rabbi of Sofia in his point in time, chief rabbi of Bulgaria, and he was actually close himself to Rabbi Daniel Sion at that point in time when he was over there. And he would actually be appointed the chief rabbi of Bulgaria after Daniel Sion was at that point in time. And let's speak a bit about Rabbi Asher Hananel. He was actually born in Shuman, I believe, respectively. He passed away in Sofia, and he was buried in Sofia, respectively. And he would actually study in the University of Sofia, University of Vienna, I believe, and the Beit Midrash of the Rabbanim in Breslau, also respectively. Now, I think he'll be working for 33 years as a rabbi in this prime position himself. I think in 1947, Hakim HaKonsterion את המכון היהודי למאדים מוקלט זה סופיה, מרכזית לתורת יהודית. He established some sort of a Torah center there, מתוך מטרה לאסוף ולשמש שירים, אגדות, מסמכים ולא קורא. I think he was very into different Jewish songs in of itself and history. I think he was close to other rabbis, including Dr. Eli Ashkenazi, Dr. Moritz Marcos, and other people. I think in December 1948, after Daniel Sion would actually go to the land of Israel, he would become the chief rabbi, Rabbi Hanan, of the Bulgarian Jewish community, and would take care of all their needs over there. Let's just say, Mishum Shadav Yisrael, Kino Rabbanim Rabbim Bulgaria, who היה יחיד שנותר. הרב חננאל היה הרב ראשי הראשון ליהודי בולגריה שהיה יליד המדינה. He was the first chief rabbi of Bulgaria after the formation of the state of Israel. לאחר שורות רבנים, חלקם אשכנזים, שובא מחוץ למדינה. I think there was a wave of Ashkenazic rabbis before him. And he was appointed to this role until 1960. Very interesting. But then I think the chief rabbi role of Bulgaria didn't actually continue in that specific capacity in of itself. That's something that we have to point out also within regards to it. I think more can be said within regards to him. Was there was more dot, let's say, datit yehudit merkazit, I think, of Rabbanim with that. Asher b'roshu hamud Rav Hananel חמש נציגים. עוד הוקמה מועצות עוזרות שיהיו כפופות לעוצמות המרכזית. In 1955 פרסמה האקדמיה הבולגרית למדיה את שני כרכי ספרים של הרב חננאל ודוקטור אלי אשכנזי, שעסק בהתפתחותם הכללית והתרבותית של עמי הבלקן, I think in the centuries 16th and 17th, and שאלות תשובות. הרב חננאל היה חבר באקדמיה הבולגרית למדעים. He was very, very academic also. And it came on 15th of July 1956. יגיע הרב חננאל לביקור לארץ ישראל, נפגש עם נשיא המדינה יצחק בן צבי. He would actually meet the president of Israel in 1956, someone named יצחק בן צבי. במהלך ביקורו ציון, הרב בריונית לעיתונות, כי בבולגריה אין אנטישמיות והסולטנות מעניקים לכם הוגן לבני קהילה היהודית שנותרו במדינה. I think very much, after the war, the anti-Semitism had calmed down, I think, in Bulgaria at the point in time. There was actually a lot of commemorations within regards to Rav Hananel, who was chief rabbi of Bulgaria. I think he actually had two daughters, and I think Asher Alul Yisrael, and I think the family maybe would actually, I think there was actually in the Neve Elias area in Tel Aviv, they would actually name a street after Asher Hananel Street, also respectively, in Tel Aviv. Let's explore some more of the famous rabbis of yesteryear in Bulgaria. Another rabbi is Rabbi Shmuel Benjamin Bacher, nearly between 1875 to 1949. He was in Plovdiv also. He was a chief rabbi of the Jewish community of Plovdiv in his time period, and was president of the Jewish court of the Rabbanim, I think, in Bulgaria also, and was took on various different Zionistic roles also, and was part of the Chaver Havad Merkazi Shel Hatnuot HaTzionit, respectively. So he had very great Zionistic roles. He was actually born in Plovdiv in 1875. He would pass away on the 9th of Tishrei in Plovdiv also, respectively. He was buried in Plovdiv in Bulgaria. It's actually interesting. His rabbi was Rabbi Yosef Raphael Uziel. I think we spoke about him before. He was very much at the time of Rabbi Asher Hananel and Daniel Sion, also respectively. He was, I think at a young age, he became an orphan, if I'm not mistaken, and he would actually go with his mother to Eretz Israel to live in Jerusalem. And Rabbi Yosef Raphael Uziel, I think, was a president of the Bet Din, the Jewish court, and the Rabbonim of the Sephardi community in Jerusalem at that point in time, would actually be teaching, educating him to the rabbinate also respectively. I think after Rav Uziel passed away, he would return to Bulgaria. 1899, תועד הרב בחר בפלובידוב כאחד הפעלים המרכזיים שסיוע ליוסף מיוחס להקים את הלשכה הראשונה של ארגון בני ברית בבולגריה. I think he would establish, with communication with Yosef Miuchas, the Bnei Brit in Bulgaria. Remember, it was very, very Zionistic over there. In the 16th of September 1899. Bereshit, in the start of the 20th century, לאחר פטירתו של רב חיים עזרא אוריה, התמנה לרב ראשי יהודי העיר. He would be appointed the chief rabbi of the city. שמואל בן ימבכה היה ממניחי היסודות למערכת החינוך היהודית, הקהילה בפלובידה. He was really working on the educational structure, let's just say, in Bulgaria. ואף עסק בהוראה בכתיבת ספרי לימוד. over there. He would be involved in regards to writing all the books over there. Ashul Fazla Beladino, Bulgaria. Much of the writings and the teaching books was written in Bulgaria itself, respectively. I think Rob David Pipano would pass away in 1924, and Rob Bacher would serve as a president at that point in time. After his passing, he would serve, I think, in the year 1929 as a chief rabbi and of Bulgaria, respectively, and was connected very much with Keren Yisod also, and was in communication, obviously, working with Rabbi Asher Hananel, and they were corresponding with rabbis all over Israel, also at various points of time. I think he was in correspondence with the chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Avram Yitzchak Cohen Cook, and there was other attorneys he was speaking to at various stages of the time. Anyone tuning in live, we're exploring the history of the Jewish community of Bulgaria. Please, everyone, you're joining in live, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 8,000 subscribers, hopefully, by the end of this month. Let's go for it, and please subscribe, friends, over here. Now, another chief rabbi of Bulgaria, another famous rabbi named Rabbi David Pipano, another rabbi we spoke about before. He lived between 1851 till 1924. He was a Turkish-Bulgarian rabbi, one of the famous rabbis also in Saloniki, and he was a chief rabbi of Bulgaria towards the end of his life. He was actually born in Saloniki, and he passed away on the 5th of December 1924, about 101 years ago, in Sofia, respectively. And yes, he was really working in Greece and Bulgaria at this point in time. He was author of great books, Sidrat Sfarim B'Nusei, HaMishpat Ivri, Haboletit Bahem, L'Avnei HaEfed, and various other books, I think, also Choshen HaEfed, also respectively. His rabbi was Rabbi Yehuda Kobo, and he lived at the time period of Rabbi Moritz Greenwald, Rabbi Simon Dinkovitz, Rabbi Mordechai Aaron Fries, who we spoke about just beforehand also. Now, Rabbi Pipano he was writing, chronicling the history of the Saloniki Jewish community. He would actually chronicle over it. Saloniki, he was born in Saloniki. Rabbi Avram Hivano. Aviva היה בן למשפחת חכמים ספרדית מקומות. He came from a great rabbinic Sephardic family. עלה לירושלים ונפטר בכ"ח אייר תרמ"ח. סבו Rabbi Aaron Hivano. His grandfather was Rabbi Aaron Hivano, who passed away on the 14th of Sivan in Saloniki. Avi Sabo was Rabbi Chaim Chanoch Hivano. He was another great rabbi, if I'm not mistaken, and there was a connection, I think, through his mother's side to Rabbi Shaul Molcho, another great darshan of his time. Let's say respectively. He was a Talmid, we have to point out, also of Rabbi Yehuda Kobo, who was the author of the Yoda Ya'aleh, and the various great works, let's just say, in itself, a great rabbi in itself. Now, I think in 1899, Rabbi Pipano was appointed the head of Jewish court in Sofia, in the capital of Bulgaria. In 1941, I think Rabbi Mordechai Aaron Fries would leave his role, and I think at that point in time, there was a lot of Zionistic activity going on in Bulgaria, and eventually, I think in 1915, he would become, if I'm not mistaken, a time period afterwards, he would become the chief rabbi of Bulgaria. Obviously, it was the time period of the First World War. In between 1915, it was a turbulent point all over the world. I think it was in 1921, Rav David Pipano was he would become the chief rabbi at that stage in time until he passed away in 1924. So I think it was about 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. And he had great books in himself. We mentioned about Choshen Efad, that was a short question and answers, and Choshen Mishpat Avnei Efad also, and many different books were actually printed in Hebrew in of itself at that point in time. We have to point out within regards to. Now, another rabbi, chief rabbi of Bulgaria, was Rabbi Simon Dinkovitz, also obviously Ashkenazic rabbi, just judging by the family name in of itself. I think he lived between 1834 to 1910, if I'm not mistaken. Much can be said about him. He was actually born, I think, in Kongrasic, I'm not sure, part of Poland, and he passed away in Vienna. He was 76 years of age in 1910 over there. He was actually buried, I think, in Vienna also. And his rabbis was Rabbi Zachariah Frankel, Rabbi Dov Ber Meiselish. He lived at a time period. He was very close to Rabbi Moritz Greenwald also. He would go on actually to have 3 children also, let's just point out. Now, Rabbi Simon Dinkovitz was born, his father was, I think, a tradesman, Yaakov, and his mother was Herla, and he would learn in the famous Beit Midrash rabbinical seminary in Breslau also, and he would move to Warsaw, I think in 1860, if I'm not mistaken, and he was close learning with Rabbi Zachariah Frankel at that point in time. It was a part of the Breslau rabbinic seminary over there, and would receive his education in Beit Midrash over there respectively. He would learn to become medicine also, if I'm not mistaken, in the university at a later stage in time, and would take various different. He was a historian also, if I'm not mistaken, but was learning under Rabbi Dov Ber Meiselish at that point, at various points in time, and much can be said within regards to him, and continue his studies all throughout, I think, Poland and Germany, if I'm not mistaken, and I think in 1885, I think at that stage in time, if I'm not mistaken, I think Rabbi Gabriel Almoshino, who was a chief rabbi of Bulgaria, would leave, and after a few months, I think he would actually come inside that role at a later stage in time. I think it was he would become the chief rabbi of Bulgaria. I'm not sure which year it was. Maybe it was in the year 1889, and he would take on various different important roles in Bulgaria, respectively. I think he was the head of Beit Sefer of the Jewish community of Tronopol, if I'm not mistaken, around 1891. And I think between 1895 to 1898, he was the manager of the school of the Beit Sefer Yisodi, the Arba Shinit Shel Kehila Yehudit, or Tronopol. 1898 would take on more positions also. And much can be said within about. So he eventually was buried in Vienna, but he was also chief rabbi of Bulgaria. I think, to be precise, he was between 1891 to 1889. Very interesting. Let's explore the role of the Bulgarian chief rabbi. I think Edrin was also that of Bulgaria, whoever was the chief rabbi Edrin. With the independence of Bulgaria, I think Jewish communities remained without any supreme rabbinical institution, and local government considered the chief rabbi to deal with the handlings of the Jewish community over there, and there was also great rabbinate over there. Let's explore who were some of the chief rabbis here of the early years, and we're going to explore the later years. Rabbi Gabriel Almosnino, he was a chief rabbi between 1880 to 1895. I think he was born in Nikopol in 1805, and he died in Sofia. The rabbi that was after him was Rabbi Prisiado Bakish. We're going to speak about him in the coming minutes. He was between 1885 to 1889. Then Rabbi Shimon Dankovitz, who we just spoke about, was between 1889 to 1891. He was former Bohemia chief rabbi also. Rabbi Moshe Tadjo, who we're going to speak about also, was between 1893 to 1895. Rabbi Prisiado Bakish was between 1895 to 1898. Rabbi Moshe Tadjo will return, I think, between 1898 to 1900. Rabbi Mordechai Enrenfries was between 1900 to 1914. He was also a Bohemia chief rabbi. Rabbi Hezkiah Davidov was between 1914 to 1918. Rabbi David Papano was between 1920 to 1925. And there was no chief rabbi till 1945, until Rabbi Asher Hananel would become the chief rabbi again of Bulgaria. Very interesting enough. So I think actually just to really rewind to now, this time period, the chief rabbi currently, I think the Sophia Synagogue, is a rabbi named Rabbi Yoel Ifra. He actually graduated from the Pachad Yitzhak Yeshiva in Jerusalem, and was ordained by Rabbi Yaakov Peretz as Sephardic Bet Midrash in Jerusalem. And in 2016, he was elected the chief rabbi in Sofia by the Central Israeli Spiritual Council, and takes care of providing kashrut. He's a shliach tzibor in the synagogue, directs, let's just say, funeral ceremonies, teaches Torah, and conducts like a conversion also, and much can be said about it. Now, who was the first chief rabbi of Bulgaria? We're just backtracking again, was Rabbi Gabriel Almosnino, also referred to as Gabriel Mercedo Almosnino. He was a chief rabbi of Bulgaria between 1880 till 1890, when he passed away. He was an important figure in the Jewish community. He helped establish modern Jewish schools, let's just say, in himself, and was a legal representative, I believe he was, of the Bulgarian Jewish community after the country gained independence. And following Bulgaria's independence in 1878, Rabbi Almosnino became the legal representative of the Jewish community and was officially appointed the chief rabbi of Bulgaria in 1880. He was part of a group of 3 Jewish men who welcomed the Russian forces to Sofia and participated in the Constituent National Assembly of Bulgaria in 1879. And at a time when there was no supreme rabbinical institution, Rabbi Al-Moslino effectively served as a representative of the entire Bulgarian Jewish community. He was born in 1805 in Nikopol. He passed away around in 1890 in Jerusalem, actually. Very, very interesting enough. Now, let's go back to chief rabbis. I think after Rabbi Asher Hananel was between 1944 to 1949. Rabbi Bechor Kachlon was the chief rabbi between 1990 to 2012. And Rabbi Aaron Zerbib was between 2012 to 2015. Now, we've actually recorded Rabbi Aaron Zerbib on our channel before. He was a chief rabbi of Bulgaria, and I think he'd go on afterwards to become a rabbi in a Jewish community in London afterwards for, I think maybe about 7 years, if I'm not mistaken. And then Rabbi Yor Yifrach has been since 2015 the chief rabbi for about a 10-year period, I believe. Very interesting enough. So let's explore more of the chief rabbis also from this list. Rabbi Moshe Shmuel Tadja, I think he would have 2 interim periods as a chief rabbi of Bulgaria. He was born in 1832 in Sofia, and he passed away in 1913 in Kozdintel, I think, which was part of the Kingdom of Bulgaria, respectively. And very, very interesting. And I think Moshe Shmuel Tadja was actually born, if I'm not mistaken, in Sofia, and he was actually ordained as a rabbi over there. I think in 1850, Nasi Nisa Labat Mishpachat Not Ablim, he would get married into Not Valim family, Amida, and they would go on to move to another area. התחייב להלאומית הבולגרית ושבו מהם, רכש השכלה כללית נרחבה בנוסף להשכלתו הרבנית, עמד בקשרים עם ראשי ההכנסיה בעירו, בשל כך נקלע לעימות עם הפלג השמרני בקהילה, אשר קיצונים שנמנמים עמו העלו באש את הספירייה שלו. הרב תג'י הפך לאיש ציבור המקובל על כל העדות ועל הסולטנות העות'מאניות. In 1864, become like the rabbi there, מונה על ידי מדחת פשע, מושיל ולייתה הדנובה, למנהל בנק מסחרי אזורי. And he would be appointed, I think, as a judge also in the Beit Mishpat of the Q-Stabil. עוד פעל רב תג'י להקמת בית ספר מודרני לתושבי עירו. He would actually open a more modern school, I believe, at one stage in time. In 1866, Yom Akmat Beit Sefer Moderni, the Kilat Kistodanim over there. He would actually establish over there. Rav Tzadjir Tamach Beseter V'Amad B'Ksharim Im Mafchanim Bulgarim Shel Chamo La'atzmot Bulgarit Uklim Tudor Pab. If I'm not mistaken. I think there was a Russian-Bulgarian war in 1877. קיבל הבטחה מפקד הכוחות הבולגרית באזור קיסודל, עלייה מרכב. I was taking on various different roles of things. I've come up in 1891. פותח הרב ראשי ליהודי בולגריה, רב סימון דנקוביץ, לאחר תקרית בפרמבט הבולגרי, והדגית הקונסטרוקטורה, פנתה לתג'יר בבקשה למלא את מקומו. He would actually take over Rabbi Dinkovitz, I think, position for several years, and he was very much working with regards to the Jewish community over there. And I think he was in very much correspondence with Dimitar Grokov at that point in time, and he would take on this position until Rabbi Moritz Greenwald would take in 1893. And I think in 1898 he will rejoin as a chief rabbi for several years of Bulgaria, and then eventually Rabbi Marcus Ehrensfries would take his role afterwards, if I'm not mistaken. So he was various different roles he would actually have there. Now, another chief rabbi of Bulgaria was a rabbi named Rabbi Prokiado Bakish. He was a Sephardic Jewish rabbi, obviously active in Bulgaria, the chief rabbi, and he was also a prominent member of the Zionistic movement in Bulgaria. So he lived between, I'm not sure the dates, I think he was born actually in 1828 in Sofia, and he died in 1910. He was named the chief rabbi of Bulgaria between 1885 to 1889 and 1895 to 1898 or 1900. He was also head of Jewish court. He participated in the first Zionistic Congress, which was held in August 1897, and that was, I think, in Switzerland, in Basel, if I'm not mistaken. And he was working along with 3 other delegates from Bulgaria. It's Tzvi Bulovshkeki, Karl Herbst, and Yoshua Kalev, and 200 other members from around the world. And let's just say these activities created difficulties. Rabbi Prakedio Bakish was not maintained in his functions as chief rabbi after 1900. Very interesting. Let's go back a bit and explore his history, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was ordained, I think in Sofia, if I'm not mistaken. He was son of wealthy, influential, notable family in Sofia, respectively, and that would help him receive good economic status in of itself and bring about him to become a leader of the community. As mentioned before, Rabbi Gabriel Almoshnino was a chief rabbi of Bulgaria, so he would actually take his place at that point in time. And at that point in time, there will also be Rabbi Simon Dankovich, who would become a chief rabbi. Rabbi Moritz Greenwald, as mentioned before, would become a chief rabbi afterwards. Bakish was obviously a very enthusiastic supporter of Zionism and was very part of the Zionist movement. And he had connections, I think, with Steve Herzl, if I'm not mistaken, and with many other great Zionistic figures, let's just say, later on. And it's actually interesting, it was in correspondence also with the famous Rabbi Moses Halevi Effendi, I think was a chief rabbi of the Ottoman Empire. Also, that's something that we had to, they had debates, various robust debates also in of itself. And Zionism was strong in some countries, but it wasn't also popular in various other places also, we have to point out. So that's a whole topic onto itself, we have to point out. And he passed away in 1910. He was about 82 years of age. Now, another chief rabbi of Bulgaria was someone named Rabbi Joseph Marco Baruch. I'm not sure if he was the chief rabbi itself per se, but he lived between, if I'm not mistaken, I think he passed away in 1899. He was a poet, he was a teacher, he was also a Zionist also, and he was very well travelled. He was a journalist, and he was very much a prominent person in Bulgaria, and he wanted to he had various different Zionistic ideas, like to make an establishment of a Jewish army to conquer the land, and was very, very, I think he lived at the time period of Ziv Jabotinsky, Benjamin Ziv Herzl, and travelled around Italy, Egypt, Algeria. So I'm not too sure, I think he passed away in 1899. He was born actually in Istanbul, and he died in Italy. And it was part of the Kingdom of Bulgaria, without a doubt. He would study philosophy and literature at the University of Bern, and he was known as a narrative of Bulgarian Jewry, as a father of the Zionistic movement in that country, respectively. And was doing huge Zionistic activities. I think was well-travelled also in France, if I'm not mistaken, in Algeria. And he was connected with the Alliance, I believe, also over there. And he was in connection with Rabbi Moritz Grunwald, who was a chief rabbi of Bulgaria, and he was writing in various different Zionistic newspapers, and he would actually help fundraise, I think, in various different parts all over the world, respectively, within regards to various different activities that were taking place. And he really, really was a believer of the revival of the Jewish people would only occur in the land of Israel, let's just point out. And he saw Israel was a central place in of itself, and everything about Israel. And I think obviously he aspired from great rabbis at that point in time, especially Rabbi Yehuda Bibas, especially was one of the famous, let's say, forefathers of religious Zionism in of itself. And much can be said within regards to that. I think 1896, Baruch actually arrived in Egypt. He founded Zionistic organizations over there called the Bar Kokhba. Very interesting enough, which will go on to various different places. It will merge also with Zionistic movement at a later stage in time. He would, I believe, also go to Basel for this famous Zionistic Congress also at that point in time. So he was involved with various different newspapers and so on and so forth. And very interesting. Much can be said with regards to him also. He was a historiographer also, and was a chronicler, and really, really examined the Jewish communities in of itself, respectively. Over there, much can be said about him. Now, another famous rabbi, now we're going way, way back, I think to the 1500s, was Yitzhak Aderbi, I believe. He was another famous rabbi. He lived between 1520 to 1577. He was another key rabbi at one stage in Bulgaria. Now we're going way, way back. He was also a halachic arbiter. He was also head of yeshiva, I think, in Salonika in Greece, and which was part of the Ottoman Empire. In fact, he was born in Saloniki, and he died. He was about 74 years of age. He was actually would study under Rabbi Shmuel di Medina, I believe, at a young age, and Rabbi Yosef Tekeas. He would actually become, let's just say, the famous student over there, and was appointed a rabbi, I think, in 1549, if I'm not mistaken, and was considered one of the greatest rabbis during the 16th century. And he was a colleague of Rabbi Shmuel di Medina, and was writing responses at that point in time, and was connected, let's just say, within regards to Bulgaria, very, very much so. His sermons, I think, was written in a specific style and was published as a Divrei Shalom by Rabbi Yaakov Klatskin, if I'm not mistaken. It was reprinted over the years, if I'm not mistaken. Also, that's something that we have to point out within regards to him. Let's explore a bit more within regards to Jewish rabbinic community of Bulgaria before the 1880s, when Rabbi Gabriel Almon Cisneo was chief rabbi. It's interesting. I think obviously we spoke about the terribleness of the Shabtai Tzvi, the false messiah during the earlier time periods. But I think in Sofia, in the late 1700s, chief rabbis such as Rabbi Yisachar Abulafia, Rabbi Reuben Bechor Jacob were chief rabbis in Sofia towards the close end of the 18th century. It's actually interesting. Rabbi Yisachar Abulafia was the son of the famous chief rabbi, Rabbi Chaim Abulafia, and the founder of the new Jewish community in Tiberias. Now, Rabbi Reuben Bechor Jacob, called from Sofia, was succeeded by Rabbi Abraham Ventura, I think around the 1806. And at the end of the 18th century, the director of the yeshiva was someone named, there was a yeshiva over there, someone named Rabbi Shmuel Conforti, who was author of the Kol Shmuel. I think that was printed in Salonika in 1787. And we talked about how the rabbinate will change hands to Rabbi Anne Freins eventually, and Rabbi Moritz Greenwald at a later stage in time. Now, it's actually interesting. We're just going to speak a bit more about the Sofia Jewish community at that stage in time, especially in the 19th century. Many trials and tribulations will befall the community, and you'd need intervention of the governor of Bulgaria to actually, I think there was at one stage in time in 1863, there was a threat of a massacre upon the entire Jewish community of Bulgaria, if I'm not mistaken, because 3 Jews had been forcibly converted to Christianity and returned to their former religion. During the Turco-Russo War, I think 15 years later, in around 1878 in Bulgaria, there was more troubles, I think, and the city of Sofia was fired by the Turks. They evacuated the city, and they were only saved by a volunteer fire brigade formed by the Jews of both parts, let's just say. So the Italian consul Positano publicly acknowledged the services of the Jews on this occasion. That's something that we have to point out also within regards to the history. I think in 1878 it was, the Jews of Sofia declared their sympathy with Bulgaria, and the regime of liberty shortly began for them. In 1880, Prince Alexander of Battenberg was appointed, it was actually him that would appoint Rabbi Gabriel Almosnino as a chief rabbi at that stage in time. And in the following year, 2 Jews of Sofia, Abraham Bahar David and Mordechai Bahar Hayim, was elected members of the principal council. And I think in 1884, 1885, unfortunately there was accusations once again and blood libels claiming there was ritual murder was brought against the Jews, although it was obviously false, these charges were. And in 1890, the municipality of Sofia granted to the poor of the city some land in Ouch Bona, one of the suburbs, and 300 Jewish families were benefited by this concession at that stage in time. Now, I think the Alliance Universal Israelite school system will actually come about there. There were 3 schools, 2 for boys, which consists of 855 pupils, and 1 for girls that consists of 459 over there. And except for an old cemetery in which a few ancient inscriptions were legible, Sofia had no permanent memorial of its remote Jewish past at that stage in time. Let's just say chronicled over, which we have to point out. I think it was several Jews of Sofia filed public offices at that stage in time. There's someone named Albert Kalib was a Minister of Foreign Affairs. Albert Bahar was a translator for Minister of Finances. And Bukus Baruch also had a prominent position over there. And there was Ferdinand of Bulgaria. There were 2 Judeo-Spanish journals which was published in Sofia called the La Verdad and the El Ekot Judaica. That has to be pointed out. And there was a Zionistic society, a women's society over there, and a student society called the Hashahar. I think since 1887, a charitable societies for the purpose of aiding poor Jewish youths through apprenticeships to various trades had been in operation under the control of Alliance Israel Universal also. There was a school system we spoke about beforehand also. So very, very interesting. So we spoke about the Sophia synagogue also already. That was very much a, let's just say, a integral part of Bulgarian Jewry also. Let's go back now a bit towards the years of the Holocaust. We didn't really speak much about the Holocaust before, but we're going to go back towards that over here. Now I'm reading over from the World Jewish Congress website over here. They've got some excellent notes breaking down the structure of various different Jewish communities. Now, I think it was in 1939, after the what's it called? Just hold on a minute. Anyone tuning in live, welcome to our channel. And please, everyone, that if you are new to the channel over here, welcome, but please keep your comments respectful also over here, because I can't really moderate the comments while I'm giving the live video over here. So please keep the comments good, because it's a topic, and we're speaking about also the 1939 periods also in of itself. So welcome everyone to the channel over here, and please keep comments respectful. Now we're speaking about the years of the Holocaust in Bulgaria. I think in 1939, after the start of the Second World War, Bulgaria witnessed its open manifestations of anti-Semitism, with one example being an attempt to replicate the Kristallnacht in September 1939. Jewish shop windows in Sofia were smashed. In 1940, anti-Semitic legislation began to take shape. It was inspired by the terrible Nazi laws in Germany and in Italy, and a key moment in this process was the adoption of the law for the protection of the nation in January 1949, which defined the Jewish community in Bulgaria as foreign elements. Now, it was hostile to national identity and spirit. The law introduced strict limitations on the rights of Jews, including the rights of voting, running for office, working in the government, serving in the army, marrying or cohabiting with ethnic Bulgarians, using Bulgarian names, and owning rural land. Jewish leaders were not alone in protesting at that stage in time. There were other people that would actually, I believe, protest at that stage in time also. I think in 1943, when Germany began demanding the deportation of Jews from Bulgaria. Okay, I think it was in 1943 that when Germany began demanding the deportation of Jews from Bulgaria, the Bulgarian public and significant portion of the political and religious leaders would oppose it. One of the most important sages in the resistance was against the plan to deport the Jewish people from the old territories of Bulgaria. Thanks to the efforts of the Bulgarian Orthodox Church, including the Metropolitan Stefan and Metropolitan Kirill, as well as other Bulgarian leaders, they managed to prevent deportation of approximately 48,000 Jewish people from Bulgaria. Several factors played a crucial role in their salvation, from the firm position of the Bulgarian intelligentsia to the mobilization of the ordinary citizens over there. That's what we have to point out now. Anyone tuning in, we're exploring about the history of Bulgarian Jewry over here on the special edition over here we are speaking about. So very, very important. We're actually, anyone tuning in live at the moment, we are exploring the different rabbis that were in Bulgaria, what actually went on in Bulgaria during that specific point in time, and now we're exploring the years of the Holocaust. And on the special edition, we're exploring the synagogues also of Bulgaria, and really trying to educate ourselves what actually took place during that specific years in time. Now, we're in the year of 1943, we are speaking about over here, and we spoke about I think that various notable cases actually took place during that period of time. Now, I think it was in so just I think one of the most notable cases was the delegation of Kaisnau who visited Sofia and it was Dimitar Peshov, the deputy chairman of the National Assembly, was advocating for the salvation of local Jews. Peshov's position, along with several other members of the National Assembly, led to the cancellation of deportation of Jews from Bulgaria. Bulgaria, although under pressure from Germany, managed to save almost all of its Jews during the Second World War. This achievement was a result of efforts of numerous Bulgarian politicians, religious leaders, intellectuals, and ordinary citizens who opposed anti-Semitic policy and demonstrated the unprecedented resistance of deportation. The story of solidarity and resistance is one of Bulgaria's most significant accomplishments during the Second World War and remains a symbol of tolerance and humanity. That's something that we have to point out within regards to it. Now, I think it's stated, unfortunately, with the assistance of Bulgarian administration and police authorities, between March 1943, 11,434 Jews from the Aegean Thrace and Macedonia and the city of Pirates were deported to Poland, and where nearly all of them unfortunately perished in the German concentration camp in Treblinka. So very, very sorry, to hear this news, and you always should cry when you hear these news that took place. This was one of the darkest phases in Bulgarian history during the Second World War, demonstrating the collaboration between the Bulgarian authorities and the Nazis in the efforts, to implement the final solution of the Jewish community over there. Let's talk a bit about post-Holocaust. Let's talk a bit more about the community facts of the country. We're just going to take a short break over here because we're just in quite a noisy place at the moment here in the city of Bet Shemesh, which we should point out. Now, anyone tuning in live, we're exploring the history of the Bulgarian Jewish community over here. There's a special live edition over here, so if anyone's new to the channel, welcome to the channel as we explore the history of Bulgaria in of itself and the country. Just reporting this from the city of Bet Shemesh. At the moment, as we'll just continue the video as we speak about the history of itself, friends. Over here, anyone tuning live, welcome to our channel over here. Just recording this actually from the city of Bet Shemesh in Israel, Ramat Bet Shemesh Aleph, to be precise, to give it its full title over here. So we're just going to state over a few more facts before we round off this very informative video of the history of the rabbinate in of Bulgaria, respectively. A few community facts about Bulgaria. The Jewish community, I believe, in Bulgaria is obviously mostly Sephardic. Obviously, the language at the time was Ladino. I don't know if it's still used as much. And there are still a few members, I believe, that actually speak Ladino. Bulgaria is one of the few countries in Europe where the Jews survived after the Holocaust, and the people of Bulgaria and the church stopped the deportation, as we've spoken about already over here. Now, the Sofia Synagogue is one of the three largest Sephardic Spanish Jewish synagogues in Europe and the largest of the Balkans Peninsula. The synagogue chandelier, as we mentioned before, weighs 1,700 kilos. I think it's the biggest one in Bulgaria over here. So that's another interesting fact with regards to Bulgarian community facts, let's just say, in of itself. And it's actually interesting just to point out again, we mentioned earlier, Rabbi Yosef Karo, the author of the Code of Jewish Law, and Rabbi Eliezer Papo, they lived and worked in Bulgaria. And Rukas arrived in Israel with the Bulgarian Jews who made Aliyah, I think, shortly after the Second World War. They were mostly, actually, the Bulgarian Jews were mostly settled in Jaffa. Now, I think roughly less than 2,000 Jews live in Bulgaria out of a total population of nearly 7 million people that actually live in Bulgaria. So it's a tiny, tiny demographic, let's just say, in of itself. Now, the majority of the Bulgarian Jews are represented by various different organizations in Bulgaria, including the Shalom organization, which is an independent, let's just say, organization. The Shalom organization happens to be. And I think it's a non-partisan, voluntary, democratic organization of the Jews of Bulgaria. Its main goals are to uphold, let's say, Jewish traditions and values, guarantee rights of its members and the Jews in the country, and to prevent all forms of racism and anti-Semitism, and it's preserve historical monuments and synagogues. That's the current, let's say, organization over there in Bulgaria, which is doing, let's say, important work. Now we can just state over some more information within regards to the Bulgarian Jewish community. Also, I think there's the Shalom itself, this organization publishes a newspaper. It's actually called Evreski Vesti, a newspaper. They've got books, brochures and other printed versions, and there's an online version of the newspaper, I think, operating even since recently, 2025. The OJB Shalom works to maintain the historical heritage, synagogues, graves, monuments, and administers and manages both its properties and property distribution of third parties. The organization provides social, health, and educational benefits, participates in acts of solidarity, and provides social assistance across the country. In addition, I think there's Jewish youth organizations there, such as BBYO, Hashomer Hatzair, WZO, Maccabi, and the organization of the Friends of Israel in Bulgaria called the Negev. There's also Chabad presence over there. And they do huge works also. That's what's got to be pointed out over here. Anyone tuning in live, we're exploring the history of Bulgarian Jewish community, so please subscribe to our channel and join our community. Now we've got fantastic content over here. Now, current religious and cultural life. The Bulgarian Jewish community, we have to point out, currently is a proud Sephardic Jewish community guided by Jewish values, and it's very pluralistic also. It's not all orthodox, I think, even currently, if I have to point out over here. The level of religious observance is described as not high, according to the World Jewish Congress, and many Bulgarian Jews come, unfortunately, through mixed marriages. Obviously, that was a result of the original communist regime. Many Bulgarian Jews identify themselves in a national, ethnic, rather than religious context, but obviously we hope Jewish religion will thrive, and there'll be a lot of Torah and mitzvot everyone will be keeping. I'll stress that from the outset. There's only 2 functioning Jewish synagogues, I think, in Bulgaria at present, which we spoke about just before. That is in Sofia and in Plovdiv. Services are held, I believe, on Shabbat, and most of the Jewish congregants will actually come on the high holy days. The synagogue in Sofia was built in 1909, and the 115th anniversary was celebrated in 2024. Now, we spoke about that synagogue just before, so we're not going to speak much about it again now. But I think the largest active demographic segment of the community is the generation aged 50 years and over. So it's an older community, but in the last 25 years, they've re-established programming, educational institutions, and families with children have begun to return to the community and to Judaism also. Obviously, that will be, I'd assume, also with the help of Chabad also over there, an active Chabad, where they're doing very, very important work all over the world in of itself. Now, kosher food is also available, I believe, in Bulgaria, and there's much, and I think it's mostly limited though to Sofia, if I'm not mistaken, and also in some touristic places like in the seaside and ski resorts. There are many kosher products though available, I think, in Bulgaria. It's listed on the Sofia synagogue, and there's a kosher canteen part of the OJB, the Shalom, which serves kosher lunch, I believe, for the elderly members, the Jewish daycare and Jewish schools in itself, and community events they provide. Let's explore the Jewish education over there currently. I think there happens to be Jewish education also in Sofia. I think in 2010, a private kids daycare center called Gan Balagan was actually opened, interesting enough. 15 years later, there are around 100 Jewish kids from 1 to 5 years of age educated annually in daycare. I think in September 2019, there was a continuation of Jewish knowledge children were receiving from the Gan Balagan daycare center over there. That's something we have to point out. And the school, I think the school is still currently managed in of itself and is doing various important things. Let's just say in of itself, that's something that we have to point out within regards to the community over there. So very, very important to know. So there is Jewish education. And just to point out a few more things within regards to the community, I think it's the OJB Shalom, together with the Board of Education Foundation, they founded a Bet Shalom, a value-based community school that teaches Hebrew, Jewish studies, and English, it's required by the Bulgarian Ministry of Education. It's got a family-like environment where students practice Jewish values, tradition, and culture. Now, I think there's another school also in Bulgaria. I think that is called Ronald Lauder School, if I'm not mistaken, which I think currently, if I'm not mistaken, educates 250 Jewish children aged from 6 to 16 years old. Respectively, it aims to educate critical thinking individuals with a developed moral system and to integrate to Jewish communities. In Sofia, there are as a public school teaching Hebrew language as a primary foreign language, and there's a bachelor and master's program, I believe, also available in Sofia University. I think in St. Kinneret, also Okridiki, and the program itself let's just say, is implemented by specialists in relevant fields, I think, respectively. And I think teaching is carried out in Bulgarian and in English, and it's an important part of the curriculum over there in language competence of students in the field of biblical and modern Hebrew. Anyone tuning in live, we are exploring the history of Bulgarian Jewry. So at the moment, if you're tuning in live at the moment, it's a special edition where we're exploring the history of Bulgarian Jewish community over here in this special edition over here. So we spoke about the different education opportunities and youth opportunities, and we spoke about now with regards to youth, we did mention about before. We're going to speak about more about the youth in of itself, but much of the education, just go back to education, Jewish community in Bulgaria comes actually from the outside formal institutions, I believe, and conducted through programs and activities of the OJB Shalom organization. Now let's speak about the youth in Bulgaria. There's BBYO, as we mentioned before. There's various other Jewish groups. I think there's rabbis over there that help prepare people for their bat mitzvah and bar mitzvah respectively. And the program is organized by the OJB Shalom, together with Central Israelite Regional Council of Bulgaria. We have to point out also. And they offer annual residential summer camps for children, I think, from 6 to 17 years old, and really educating teenagers in Jewish education in of itself and Jewish traditions. Now, Jewish media, as we mentioned before, obviously small-sized community, there is publishing newspaper, which we mentioned before, and different books, I think, with regards to the Holocaust and so on and so forth. Relations with Israel. Bulgaria and Israel share a strong and positive relationship marked by mutual recognition, diplomatic ties and cooperation in various fields. Bulgaria was among one of the first countries to recognize the State of Israel in 1948. They established embassies in 1952, and diplomatic relations were suspended, I think, in 1967. Obviously, but were fully restored come up 1990. We have to point out, ushering a renewed era of collaboration. So the partnership between Bulgaria and Israel spans a wide range of sectors: tourism, defense, trade, culture, education, economic development, and obviously following the horrors of October 7th, Simchat Torah, a majority of Bulgarian leaders and political figures strongly condemned the terrorist attacks and affirmed Israel's right to self-defense, reflecting continued solidarity and shared values between the two countries. Now, there's an embassy, I think, also in Israel. Also, we have to point out. We spoke about the Central Synagogue. There's a Jewish museum in. I think actually interesting at the Central Synagogue, which was designed by the Friedrich Grunger between 18 and the Central Synagogue. They actually have. We spoke about the beautiful sanctuary it is in of itself. They actually include a Jewish museum, which we mentioned about before, exhibitions of Judaica as well as historical exhibitions, which is featured over there. And there's a Jewish cemetery, I think, which is a 50,000 square meter section of Central Sophia Cemetery, if I'm not mistaken, over there, which includes about 7,000 grave markers, most of them toppled, I think all broken, unfortunately. And they are made of granite, marble, and limestone, and engraved in Bulgarian, Hebrew, and in Ladino. Also, most date from the 20th century. Many have laminated photo portraits of the deceased. The cemetery also contains several ohalim, or memorial graves, for Jews killed by fascists. The cemetery is walled, gated, and guarded, although I think the Central Israelitic Spiritual Council looks after it, and the community lacks the funds to maintain the site. The vegetation and the drainage constantly causes problems over there. So the current chief rabbi is someone named Rabbi Yoel Ifra, who mentioned about before. He was actually elected in the year 2015 or 2016, if I'm not mistaken. And I think Rabbi Zerbib was Rabbi Aaron Zerbib was rabbi before him, and Rabbi Yoel Ifra was elected and is the head of the Sophia Synagogue, I think, currently. And he has various responsibilities, especially in kashrut. He leads funerals, teaches Torah over there, and does conversion processes, if I'm not mistaken, also. So yeah, he was actually ordained from the Yeshivat Hachad Yitzhak, as we mentioned before, by Rabbi Yaakov Peretz, and does very important roles in some. So yeah, we try to. There's much more we can speak about Bulgarian culture and we try to get like a whole breadth within regards to history. Friends, to be speaking about the history of the Bulgarian Jewish community will be good. On today's special edition over here, so welcome everyone to our channel. We've already recorded 25 countries in this series. We have to point out, we've recently spoken about a lot of South American countries. We've explored some of the Central American countries in the series, such as, let's say, countries such as Panama, Costa Rica, and we are now going to speak more about the European countries again. We spoke about Bulgaria, the Jewish community history today, which we have to point out, the rabbis, the synagogues, the cemeteries we spoke about today. And hopefully we're going to cover many more countries in the coming weeks, Be'ezrat Hashem. I was going to originally do this video on Bulgaria on 2 parts, but because I squeezed it all in, so we weren't able to speak about all the rabbis that were from Bulgaria, but we did cover a basis of the more recent history from the last 100, 200 years. But obviously the community is very small. So anyone tuning at the moment, please subscribe to our channel. At the moment, welcome to our community. We've got fantastic content over here. And we also on this channel, we record a lot of biography videos of histories of rabbis this year. So probably about 15 of the rabbis we spoke about today, we've already recorded videos in the past about. We have to stress out. Also record many other videos. We do tours all over Israel. We like to explore biblical Israel, the archaeology of Israel. We go to different places. We also have a series here on this channel where we get another great rabbi of modern day to give over some amazing inspiration for us and to share with us various different wisdoms and so on and so forth. That's the project that we're working on, and we're doing loads of projects over here. So thanks everyone for watching. Welcome to our community. At the moment we had a lot of people that watch this live, so please subscribe to the channel. And we like to record also the videos in various different places also. So we like to explore all over Israel and state over videos and importances in of itself. So I think on that note, wishing you all well. Thank you for watching, taking the time to watch. And Be'ezrat Hashem, join the channel and the community and watch the space for some more great content. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel now. As we explore all over Israel, we go around, and we spoke about Bulgaria today also. Also, you can go on there's a special section on the channel where it actually lists all different countries we've already recorded about over the last few months since we started this series. So you can actually watch back all those videos. And if you come from any of those countries or you descend from those places, please write a comment on the videos and tell us which country you are from. Are you from a rabbinic family? Do you descend from any big rabbis? We'd love to know all that information also. Really, really appreciate it if you could tell us all this information. And so then maybe we could, if we haven't included a video yet about a rabbi that you descend from, we could always speak about that specific rabbi. It will always be a privilege to speak about them. But so please let us know. And remember, we were able to speak more about what happened in Sofia in today's program. But I would recommend everyone else to research. If you want more research in regards to the Bulgarian Jewish community, research more about them and learn more about them respectively over here. So very, very interesting over here. So I think on that note, wishing you all well, and take care, and thanks for watching. Have a great day.